Hi YouTubers, welcome back to Vintage Fashion Hat Chat. I'm Norma Shepherd, the director of the Mobile Millinery Museum and the author of 5 books on vintage fashion, including 1,000 hats. And today I want to talk about a particular type of trim found on hats, but it's also found on a whole lot of other things, from belts to corsets to luggage to shoes. You might have guessed it, I'm going to talk about buckles today. And what prompted me to think about this was seeing the unveiling of the Diana statue. And of course, what drew most people's eyes immediately, and continues to do certainly for me every time I look at it, is that great big buckle uh, around her waist, which was very 1980s, of course. And that was iconic of her era. And we're told, of course, that the statue was patterned after a photograph of her, quite an attractive one from the 1980s. So, but it got me wondering whether this is going to prompt a kind of a fashion return to belts and large buckles. I have my doubts, since we are all, I don't know how many of us want to accentuate our waist after we've been in COVID for a couple of years almost, but it may very well provoke some a return to an appreciation for this type of ornamentation on fashion. Almost like jewelry, of course, which is another love of mine, very collectible. And people have collected belts, buckles, slides from Victorian times. Anyway, giving it further consideration, I happened to notice today on the Instagram post by Doris on the way we wore, a nice ensemble, a vintage ensemble there today with a similar belt buckle, which of course draws your eye right to it. So I thought, well, why not go through the archives and see what I can pull out of our hats that have been similarly treated to decorative buckle or clasp or slide over the years. The very first one I want to show you is from the 1970s. And I've selected this because of the size and shape of the buckle, which to me is not dissimilar to what we see on the Diana statue and the garment that Doris posted on the way we wore. This particular one is plastic. It is made to look like metal, and it even has the buckle pin. So it references an earlier period, of course, and you can see that the black velvet ribbon has been pulled through the openings on this buckle, pierced with the pin, and continues on. So this is a decorative technique that was used in different eras, but particularly popular in the 1970s going into the 1980s. So you see this definitely on belts in the 80s. Of course, the end of the 1970s, hats were starting to fall out of fashion. The hat itself is a long nap beaver felt, beautifully blocked and shaped, gorgeous brown, quite a popular color in that time. And the designer of this was Peggy Ann. So the label is Peggy Ann Original. And that to me is a great example. Of course, over the years, buckles have been used on everything from luggage, of course, to corsets, to shoes, to hats, watches, jewelry. Some of the bangles that we love fasten like a buckle. And I want to show you sash pins were also quite popular and buckle-like in the Edwardian era. This one still has its pin. So that's the idea. I have a few more hats that I was able to pull that do have buckles to show you examples of those. And the buckles themselves are collectible, but of course I would hate to see them removed from the hats. You may also, if you're a buckle collector, have shoe buckles. And I have examples of those actually in my book, In Step with Fashion, 200 Years of Shoe Styles. Some of the vintage shoe styles from 2 centuries ago are shown with buckles. And then, of course, later on in the 60s, we have some decorative shoe buckles in that book as well. So I refer you to that. I will include links to the Diana statue image and the photograph that it was patterned after, as well as the Instagram post that I mentioned. And I will talk about my hat at the end of the video. Now, another type of fastener for ribbon or leather, etc., for belts is called the slide. And the slide does not buckle, but you simply pull whatever it is. In this case, it's ribbon through the openings on this, and it secures a belt or whatever you'd like. So very, very decorative on this early 20th century straw. I love how the early, it's plastic. And some of the ways, like if you happen to find these buckles and they're just sort of orphans, they're not attached to their original garment, belt, shoe, or hat, you can get some clues as to what it might have been used on. So this is not a flat rectangle, this is curved, so this would work quite well on the hat. Something with a tighter curve would probably have been a shoe buckle. So this early straw, it has a chignon strap. The inside has beautiful lining, and again, it's one of those linings where they sometimes would stuff the inner crown with either false hair or tissue paper or something like that to have it sit higher or differently. So now I want to move on to another fur felt hat. This one earlier on, very likely the 1960s, and this is a dark chocolate brown, a long nap felt, and it has a different buckle. We can see that part of the jeweled buckle is hidden under the satin, and that the satin weaves its way through, is pierced here with the pin, and just forms a lovely decoration, giving the sense that this is cinched. And when I'm talking about cinching, actually a few hundred years ago, before hats became made to fit properly in quotation marks, often they were loose and were banded and required a buckle to tighten the hat. So that's where that originates from. This one has no label, but it's in lovely condition and a good example. Now, one more to show you, and this is different again. This one is Edwardian, and it's think Gibson Girl silhouette. The women would enhance their hair with what were called rats. The hair was very high, and when you see the size of this crown, you'll get a sense of the wonderful, really imposing stature that the women had when they wore hats like this. So I'm showing you the buckle, which is off to the side in the front. These are, let me take a closer look. Yeah, so they're set in rhinestones. The hat itself is like a faux fur. It's almost like an upholstery fabric. Think Anne of Green Gables and her satchel. A wonderful old Edwardian hat pin. And we have some feathers and just a wonderful mix of decorations. So in this case, the buckle does serve to secure the band, but it's also decorative, and they've tossed a little feather in there. And another thing that I find so interesting with Victorian and Edwardian hats is the color combinations that they would consider. I'm not sure we would put this pumpkin orange with this raspberry feather nowadays, but it certainly works. So that's my little chat about buckles on hats, and of course we can find them on shoes as well. I'd love to know your opinion about are we going to bring back those waist cinching belts with the big buckles or not. I did promise I would speak about my hat, and I will tell you that this hat is an adaptation. This was a lavish trim on a much larger hat, designer hat, and I'm No disrespect to the designer, but I did have it altered just to wear almost like a fascinator on a chignon strap. I've forgotten who the designer was. Um, Maybe you believe that, maybe you don't. I'm not sure I believe it myself. I may know. I may remember. But anyway, it is black floral, um, just a couple of wisps of feathers and some tulle. So there you have it. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe, share. I post Mondays and Thursdays. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified regularly of new material. And if you have suggestions, ideas, comments, please let me know in the comments. And in the meantime, have a hatty day.